Welcome back to today's Explainer. Today, we are completely dismantling a deeply held social belief, the idea that being a constant yes person is some kind of ultimate virtue. For a long time, society has told us that endlessly accommodating everyone around us is just, well, kindness. But as we unpack the research today, we're going to uncover that underneath all that agreeable behavior, something much darker is actually happening. We're going to look really closely at the hidden psychological costs of this behavior, and most importantly, how you can finally break the cycle.
Okay, let's dive into this. On the surface, people-pleasing parades around as pure generosity, doesn't it? It looks like you being the absolute easiest person in the office to work with, or that one friend who always agrees to help with a weekend project, even when you're literally running on fumes. But the jarring truth is that it isn't generosity at all. It's a deeply ingrained survival strategy. Think back to when you were younger. At some point, you realized a fundamental rule about your environment. Being liked kept you safe. Saying yes actively avoided conflict, and putting others first was just the most reliable way to earn approval.
Because of those early realizations, your brain adapted. It created a highly effective, incredibly simple rule to navigate the world. If they're happy, I'm safe. It's like your brain hardwired this connection to protect you. And honestly, it worked. It helped you avoid conflict and secure that validation you desperately needed. But here is the massive, undeniable problem with this psychological rule. It never expires. Your brain doesn't just switch it off when you grow up or when your environment changes. Because this rule never expires, you find yourself saying yes when you desperately want to say no. You agree out loud when internally you don't actually agree at all. You stay silent when something inside of you is practically screaming to speak up.
And slowly, over time, that leads us to the first severe cost of people-pleasing. You disappear. I'm talking about a complete loss of your identity. When you are constantly twisting and adjusting yourself to fit into the exact shape that's going to please the people around you, you fundamentally stop knowing who you actually are. You literally lose yourself in the process of accommodating everyone else.
Let's break down exactly what that lost identity looks like in practice. First, your opinions become incredibly flexible. Suddenly, you find yourself agreeing that a terrible movie was an absolute masterpiece just because your boss liked it. Second, your boundaries become totally invisible. People cross them without you ever raising a flag. And third, your personality becomes completely reactive. Actually, scratch that. It's more like you stop living your own life entirely. Instead, your whole existence becomes an exercise in just managing other people's reactions to you, making you totally lose track of who you actually are underneath it all.
That loss of identity brings us directly to the second hidden cost: resentment. Every single time you say yes against your will, there is this quiet, frustrated voice inside of you. It's the voice of your true self, and it's whispering, "This isn't fair." But because of your survival strategy, what do? You ignore it. You push it down. You ignore it again and again and again. But that quiet inner frustration doesn't just vanish because you ignored it. It builds up, like a pressure cooker. And this brilliantly illustrates the tragic progression of that ignored voice. It always starts as quiet frustration, but as you keep saying yes when you really mean no, that frustration inevitably morphs into complete bone-deep exhaustion. You feel utterly drained. And finally, that exhaustion turns into emotional distance. You start feeling completely depleted and distant around the very people you are actively trying to please. It's a tragic irony, really. Your effort to keep them close by pleasing them is the exact thing pushing you away from them emotionally.
Now, here is the part that most people completely misunderstand, and we really need to shatter this misconception today. People-pleasing does not make people respect you more. It does the exact opposite. Respect is built on firm boundaries. It is absolutely not built on blind compliance. When you never say no, you aren't showing people that you're wonderfully generous. What you are actually doing is teaching people that your time, your energy, and your personal needs are entirely negotiable. And over time, as people realize your needs are negotiable, they stop asking for your help and they start expecting it. This leads us straight to the third devastating cost: loss of control. Your time is no longer your own. Your energy, not yours to direct anymore. Your own needs get shoved to the absolute bottom of the priority list because the expectations of others have completely taken over the whole shebang. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is why we keep doing it to ourselves, even when it costs us so incredibly much. Your brain is essentially running a software program on loop. Step 1, you get someone's approval by pleasing them. Step 2, your brain rewards you with a massive hit of relief and validation. Step 3, repeat.
Every time someone is happy with you, you feel that momentary validation, and let me tell you, that feeling becomes an addiction. You continually chase that relief, even when it severely costs you your time, your energy, and your self-respect.
I want to say this next part very deliberately, so pace yourself with me here. That is not kindness. That is conditioning. You are trapped in a cycle of chasing validation at the absolute expense of your own self-respect. So the ultimate question becomes, how do you break this cycle? How do you escape this conditioning without becoming, a cold, selfish person? Well, the answer is that you don't stop caring about people. Instead, you simply have to change the rules of the game. Here is how we shift to actionable solutions. Rule 1, discomfort is not danger. You have to understand that when you finally start saying no, your body is going to react. Your heart rate might genuinely spike. You might feel this heavy wave of guilt or anxiety or just general awkwardness. But you need to know this. Feeling uncomfortable does not mean you did something wrong. It simply means you did something new. You are stepping outside the conditioning and your brain is just reacting to the unfamiliar territory. Rule 2, pause before you respond. Look, people pleasers have a deeply ingrained instant reaction habit. The moment a request comes in, the mouth just automatically opens and says, "Sure, no problem," or "I'll handle it," before you even glance at your calendar or process if you actually have the capacity. You have to intentionally break this immediate reflex by deliberately creating space before answering any request. You need a tool to create that space, and it's simply this: let me think about it. So the crucial point is how deploying just this one phrase whenever someone asks something of you instantly shatters that automatic people-pleasing pattern. It gives you the necessary breathing room to evaluate if you actually want to say yes, completely removing the immediate pressure of the other person's expectations forcing your hand.
And that brings us to Rule 3, define your non-negotiables. You absolutely cannot wait until you are in the heat of the moment to figure out what you stand for. You must decide in advance what you're going to protect and what you will absolutely no longer tolerate. You need to clearly prioritize your own values and figure out what matters more to you than external approval. Because if you don't take the time to do this, you face a really harsh reality. If you don't define your boundaries, I promise you, someone else will. If you leave a void where your limit should be, other people will gladly step right into that void and dictate those limits for you. And spoiler alert, those limits will always serve their needs, not yours.
Let's move to and see how this builds into your actual life. When you start implementing these rules, you will notice an immediate shift in your relationships. The people who truly respect you, they will adjust to your new boundaries. They might be a little surprised at first, sure, but they will respect them. And the ones who don't adjust, well, they were simply benefiting from you not having any boundaries in the first place. Reassure yourself that losing people who only liked you for your utter lack of boundaries is not a loss at all. It is actually a massive personal victory. I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over today. Are you in control or are you surrendering? People-pleasing often feels like a clever way to control your environment, but in reality, it's an act of total surrender of your own identity. The incredible realization is this: the exact moment you stop trying so desperately to be liked by absolutely everyone is the exact moment you finally start being respected by the right people. Think about that and start taking your control back today. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.